Gregory Gelfand, that was awesome. Thank you so much for performing for us for an hour and 15 minutes here in Brooklyn. Before we get started, just tell everyone who's listening at home where you're from, how you got into music. Just give them a little background.
Well, I'm originally from St. Petersburg, Russia, but I've been in America forever, so I'm all Americanized and stuff. I'm, with you guys now. And, I think I started with music around when I was 14 years old. I just picked up a guitar. My father bought me a guitar. My father was actually a published musician during the Soviet Union. So, he was like one of those rare cases that actually published some revolutionary songs and got paid a little for it, but only in Germany. It's funny. He told me a story. Yeah, he stepped off the plane, and as soon as he stepped off the plane, they had a check for him, and he was very surprised by what it was, because in the Soviet Union, you weren't really allowed to collect, copyrights for your song. There was no such thing. But in the German part of the Soviet Union, you could. So when he stepped off the plane, they actually literally just gave him some money. So it's kind of nice. But he inspired me a lot, and I think I'm basically kind of following in his footsteps, because he was a musician, and he still is a musician, very much. And he was a revolutionary at his, during that time, actually writing a lot of stuff that could have gotten him in a lot of trouble. Eventually he did a little bit, but that's a different tale. But he was a big inspiration, and, he got me my first guitar, taught me my first few chords. And then from there, I just kind of went on a journey, started with heavy metal, went into more, Jimi Hendrix and more hippie music. And then finally ended up, with a mix of electronica and, people like New Deal, Disco Biscuits, really kind of just trying to get those influences and incorporate them.
Our team is definitely big fans of the last two bands you mentioned. So
STS9.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've been there. So you performed such an interesting set today, and I spent a lot of time listening to your catalog of music.
Oh, thank you.
And don't think I've ever actually heard anything quite like it. So for anyone who is at home listening to this or watching this on YouTube, we'll have a link below that you can actually watch the full set of Gregory's performance today. But I would love for you to talk about how you got to the point of this super unique style of yours. The way I would describe it is just a constant evolution, a constant changing of vibes and grooves that just keeps you moving. And so I'd love to hear about how you arrived at that style.
I really come from a rock and roll background, but the last 5 to 10 years, music really took on a different change. And I think really the way I arrived there is I played in a lot of live bands. And I realized something was missing there, because in deep house and house music, there's something that involuntarily you just cannot stand there. The bass lows, the beats, you can't stand still, right? You just keep going and going. And some rock music, it was missing that. Although some bands were trying to implement this change, like STS9 or Disco Biscuits, right? But still, there's still there's still a band, and there's something missing. And at the same time, the DJs, they're great and they're awesome, but there was a live element that's missing. And some of the, electronic music is very redundant. And so I think, one of the things that I really tried to do is to change that redundancy and then introduce some sort of a genre banding. But, at times maybe I've gone too far, too many noises, too many changes, and that's what I've kind of heard. But that in itself actually created a distinction.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that really helped. Again, I've never heard anything quite like what you play, which is very hard to do nowadays. So high five on that one.
Thank you, brother. Thank you so much. It's really nice to hear, it coming across, because when I was putting these songs together, there's such a wide spectrum of sounds that's available to a producer these days. And it's very challenging, especially as a band, you're kind of limited to your instruments. And although as a synth player, you have a wide array, you're still limited to a keyboard. Meanwhile, as a producer, you have such a spectrum of sonic, differences, everything from, some sort of a African string instrument to just a low wah 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 wah, I feel like you really can combine them across the board, to get to that chill or that tingle, because that's really right. That's every producer's goal, is to grab you and make you tingle, right?
Excellent. So I would love to take a deep dive now into your creative process. So my first question would be, what would you say is an essential element to a fantastic song? Like, what do you feel like, what are you going for, an element that you're looking to put in your music that makes it your own, that makes it a really standout piece of music?
Well, I think, and I'm still working at this, right? I think really just taking somebody on a journey. I mean, I feel like a lot of the inspiration for the music that's made these days, it doesn't go deep enough inside, and I'm not saying that I do, I'm also scratching the surface. But what I really try to do is just like, kind of like a Fibonacci or like a Mandelbrot, just like take a leaf and describe it, like for instance, one of the songs that we're going to be putting out soon is called Panorama. And that's really just about being on top somewhere, like maybe on a mountain or maybe on top of a rooftop, where initially it's very beautiful and it's very soft and it's very calming, kind of like the shoot we did today, with the beautiful sun. But then it gets dark and it turns dark and you realize, holy cow, I'm really high up. And I mean, at least that's what I was trying to do, is really to just kind of like start really soft, but then kind of put the fear in you a little bit, more lower frequencies, more bass, more womp, like kind of like hard synth sounds. And it starts really soft, like bongos and a little like light disco piano, So, that's really the transformation, to go from like you're standing in a calm piece and you're standing on top, but then you realize you're really high up. And if it gives you that feeling, then I somewhat succeeded. If not, hopefully, it was just Janir and bending enough and there was enough notes to at least make it unique.
Awesome. That was a great answer. So when you're actually creating, do you have any sets of habits that you continually come to when you're creating music?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I always start with the beats. I try to find an interesting beat, and then it kind of takes a life of its own, like I almost feel like I just try to move puzzle pieces. Like you hear a good sound, you hear a good synth, you play a few notes, you record maybe some guitar licks, maybe some flute licks, start playing with effects, and then really just start layering and seeing, like, well, this sounds interesting, but doesn't really belong there. And it's like almost like a giant puzzle, like, I mean, sometimes I'll get to 80 to 120 tracks, like, and then I'll see like, well, this doesn't belong here, that doesn't belong there. And it's like an endless movement of puzzle pieces to really make something fit where at least somewhat it flows into each other, Otherwise it sounds really strange. And in some of my songs, I'm guilty of that. There's like hard cuts and things like that. But still, I'm really trying to incorporate a lot of like melodies, a lot of progressions, a lot of synchronizations that, keeps electronic music from that repetitiveness.
So where do you pull most of your inspiration from? Do you have a set of artists or specific artists that you really like love and pull inspiration from?
Well, I mean, I definitely anything by June and Deep. I mean, those guys, wow,
Yes, right.
And I'm really happy to say we recently got signed to Tracks and Symphonic, and I definitely some old school house, like record pressing tracks, but really I think some of these younger, newer artists who are really setting the standard for sound and frequencies, like they really play with the analog synths, with a lot of the effects to get to a certain frequency where like you're really interested in what is that. Like I've literally like played some of these songs in like a park, at some open parties or even in a club, and you see people stop and turn around and are like, what is that? Because it's really these frequencies, low and high, that are made to do that. And these guys can really, like, I'm still struggling with those frequencies. I'm more about like the composition and progression, but these guys really concentrate on hitting these frequencies and then progressing you through them. And that's kind of, where I'm trying to get to as well.
That's a perfect segue. So you were talking about getting signed. So for all the young budding musicians that are looking to do just that, I'd love for you to share that process, the things you've learned, some lessons that you could teach to others on how to get there, how to get signed to a label, if that's their goal.
Well, I think the most important thing is first to self-release. And when you do self-release, do some PR with that self-release. Not a lot, just a little, just enough so that the PR is not fake and so that the PR is actually about you and your process and what the message you're trying to portray or the character you're building or the storyline you're making. That's very key, because if you release without PR, it's kind of useless. But once you've released that, then you have something, and you shouldn't release too many of those, because you should show what you have to give to the world and then kind of show it around, because people are always looking for new artists and new art to make, you know?
Definitely am.
Yeah. And there's so many artists now. I mean, the market is drowned, but everybody's always looking for something interesting and unique. And even if you don't have something interesting and unique, if you just have a good sound, you know, if you listen to your critics, so to say, you could really get somewhere with some of these other bigger people, like owners of record labels. And I guess the journey would be start with lower record labels, easy, more approachable record labels. And then once you take self-release, more approachable record labels, then you could try to approach the bigger labels and get distribution. But you also have to remember, you know, in this day and age, in our digital age, you have to do a lot of the legwork. You have to figure out what your journey is as far as PR. They can help you, and they can definitely help you monetize quicker, you know, as far as record companies and distribution platforms. But it's really up to you to build your own report by performing, by, you know, now a lot of the streaming, you know, that really helps to project around the world and really to build your music out and build your fans out, because without a fan base, without a fan funnel, you know, you can't really progress your music.
So let's dig into that. So what tip would you give to someone to help them create an actual fan base, to help them get to that point?
Well, you know, I'd say go back to the basics. You know, I'd say,
we're in New York City, so if you hear some ruckus behind us,
people getting rough.
Yep.
I think it's very important to understand your goals and understand your capabilities. If you understand that, then you could kind of create a journey for yourself and understand where you can get to financially from music, as well as, you know, popularity wise. So even for bedroom producers, there's always a chance if you understand your audience and how to reach out to them. And there's so many different mediums now. So I think concentrating obviously on digital marketing, digital media, and having a plan, having a campaign that's like templated for each release. I mean, there's so many different products, things like Hootsuite, that allow you pre-program for months, if not even a year in advance, what you're going to release, how it's going to look like, different social platforms, you know. And, you know, it's really putting in the time. If you put in the time, there's a lot of things you can do now that you couldn't long ago. Now, that doesn't mean that it's easier now. It's actually harder, because when you get signed, it still doesn't, you know, it's not like the old days. You know, you'd get signed and started, you were made. No, now you have to still do a lot of work. And fortunately, we were signed by Trax, like I mentioned. We were also signed by Sympathy.
Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, we're really excited. You know, we're working with Rachel Kane. She was a real inspiration because, you know, during the pandemic, there was a full shutdown and we couldn't play any more shows. And this was, you know, unbearable, because the biggest thing for me is really being in front of an audience and connecting with them. That electricity, to me, it's like intoxicating, and that's my favorite thing in the world, honestly. And there was a full shutdown, but she kept the record playing, so to say, and she started the stream show that she does every Saturday night with Trax Records, and we've been streaming with her every Saturday night for, you know, since the pandemic started, actually. And she kind of kept it going, and she held it down. So it really, it really helped us, you know, and gave us an inspiration to kind of like progress and do more and put out more music and use the time productively instead of just kind of being locked up and confused and scared and
So
sad.
for all our listeners at home, I'm hearing consistency is key.
Yeah, I mean, a plan, I think, is key. Definitely. Like, you can't just like make music and have no plan. You have to have a plan and correct expectations. Like, if you put out your own music, you know, don't think you're going to hit it somewhere all of a sudden. Put in the time, create a Facebook group, have a little show, start having little followers, and then refer to other people, you know, like as far as smaller record companies, you know, smaller production and release distribution companies. They're there to help, you know, like places like Symphonic, for instance. They're a little bit of a higher up in the food chain, because they actually evaluate your music. They have their own playlists and they curate them. So when you release, you could actually let them know, okay, 4 to 6 weeks from now, which is their norm, you're going to release. And they help you get placement. And that placement helps you get more gigs, and the gigs help you get more placements. And so it's like a good catch-22 instead of a bad one. And I think, you know, a lot of the artists and musicians, you know, they really struggle with the first few steps, you know, and I'm kind of there as well. And even the famous people, they always go back to these first few steps. It's just that how famous people and successful people get there is by keep doing the same thing. You fall off the horse, you get back on it, you know, and you ride somewhere where the fields are fine for riding, you know.
So are there any things that you do on a consistent basis that help you come back to those first few steps? Like what habits would you say that you come to that help you be consistent?
Well, I think really building a model for yourself as far as releases, as far as expectations as well. And like, for instance, if you have a decent PR person, you know, they don't cost that much. And then with each release, they actually do some damage for you, get you placement, get some articles, get some interviews for you. You'll see yourself making headway. And listen to your audience, listen to your fans. They'll tell you how it is. If you're out there playing and you got some art piece and you're just convinced that it's so good and you drop it and it's just like no reaction, you know, like it's either crickets or like even worse, people are like, what's going on right now? Maybe we should go over there. It's safer or something. Or like, you know, it's too quiet or it's, you know, I think it's very good to experiment. I mean, I'm an electronic producer, but it's good to experiment even if you're in rock or other genres. Attract to your audience that they love, that they go crazy for, and then play your own and see how they react. What's the reaction? Does it keep them going? If it keeps them going, you got something there. But if it doesn't,
that's a great tip.
You know, like see their reaction, you know, see if they like it. And if they don't like it at some point, figure out, well, why didn't they like? Talk to them. Ask them, well, what didn't you like?
So you DJ a lot, right? So you get the opportunity to really test your music out in the field with fans. Even though I know we've had COVID happening for the last few months, you've still been doing some sort of events that are with smaller crowds. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah. I mean, we were fortunate enough to do a big festival like Elements recently. And that was a bigger crowd. I think 500 was their capacity. And they actually tested on a Thursday, and that was required, and then tested you again on a Friday. And I think somehow New Jersey gave them a sound ordinance and everything, and they were able to perform. So that was a very interesting experience for us. But yeah, we started, you know, when COVID just happened, we started doing a lot of like private house gigs, you know, like some birthday parties. I think all of the DJs started doing that, you know, like they just dropped out. Then really a lot of streaming. Streaming is key because, you know, all the concerts you do, if you're a local DJ, you're not going to hit anybody in UK or like India or Africa, and there's fans there, you know, there's a base there. And you know, you could build in expectations. If you're performing, like, let's say in the afternoons, you're still hitting UK, you're still hitting Australia, you're still hitting time zones that people might be interested in your music. And if you're just concentrating on playing live here, you're not reaching out there. So what we've been doing is actually, we've been doing these small stream shows where we invite people over, you know, and we do like, you know, and then we stream out to Mixcloud for our profile. We stream for Trax Records. We had this whole slew of DJs in a coalition, which was called House to House Party. You know, that was going for a while. And you know, really, we just try to do what we can to get fans besides just our immediate shows. But there have been a few shows, you know, and it's been kind of interesting because you get much more intimate with people. You can't do 500 or 1,000 people or even 1,500, nothing, you know, maximum 30, 50, you know, so maybe 100, you know, if you're like slipping in somewhere, you know, and at least in New York City, in this area, that's how it is. I know that in Atlanta and some other places, they have bigger shows. They have drive-in shows and other things that they're still doing, that the numbers are a little bigger. But that gives you a chance, actually. That gives you a chance to interact with your audience and see, well, why did he just leave? If there's only 30 people here, why aren't they dancing on the floor, pumping their fists, you know, and making noises like woo and wee, you know, like if you're not getting them there, something's wrong. Like something, you got to do something different, you know. So
you mentioned to me in a phone conversation we had the other day that you actually have a group of musicians that you talk with on a weekly basis. So I'd love if you could chat about that and tell us how that's actually helped you progress as a musician and an artist, because I think that's something that most musicians could probably do. Most musicians have other friends that are musicians. So what tips would you actually give to someone if they want to start a group of their own, you know, musicians to help inspire and lift each other up?
So our group, it's first I'll tell you a little bit about the group, and then I think people can take some tips, because it really helps. The group is called Artists Anonymous, and I didn't start it, but I became a member and I helped propel it. And what we do is we meet Mondays at 9:00, and we have different types of guests, that are brought on: record company owners, smaller and bigger, PR folks, playlist curators, radio show directors. There's just all kinds of guests that help you understand, well, what am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? We had this one guy who was Madonna's guitarist for the first 4 albums, toured with a Hall & Oates for 20 years. And he was really just this amazing studio musician. And he explained like how he got there. I don't know if you know this song by CNC Music Factory.
Yeah, of course, we all know that.
So that's him going.
Really?
Yeah. So he's got all of these tracks that he's a part of and that he monetized on, and so he was a great guest as many others. It's very interesting to hear their perspective, to get some hints from them, and maybe subscribe to their services. Because that also helps them. If it's PR services or I actually reached out and we're probably going to work with the studio musician. I'm really excited about that, and so this group, we meet. We listen, we talk to each other, and it really kind of helps things go, and it helps you feel that you're not alone, because when you're alone, it's very tough. And what we've also started to do, we're now, curating playlists with these folks, that are on this call, and to help build fan bases and to help, kind of create a funnel, to help work with their Facebook, Instagram, any social media that they may have, and to tie it all together. And then eventually start having live shows with them, when things start going well. Because, like you take one pencil, it breaks very easily. But you take a stack of pencils, guess what? It ain't breaking.
I like that analogy. So I'm going to rattle off a few questions here for you.
Thanks for having me, by the way.
Dude,
this is so awesome.
Amazing. This is so
cool.
It's
like
guys,
so exciting. This roof is so pretty. And that sunset was just magical.
It was. Everyone who's listening, if you get a chance, you can watch the full set. That will be on YouTube. There'll be a link again in the description to watch the full set. So I'm going to rattle off some quick questions and give you some quick answers. And then we'll wrap it up.
Sounds good.
Who's the artist you pull the most inspiration from, and why?
I would say Jimi Hendrix.
Oh,
and I have to say more than once because I'm I like a few things, right? So I would say Jimi Hendrix and Chopin.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah,
because ends of the spectrum.
Yeah, they're all really fast with notes, but one is really like he rips it. He's really raw. Well, Chopin, he can be raw, but in a very gentle classical music kind of way, and his progressions are just, phenomenal,
Love it. Okay, next one. What was the most pivotal moment in your musical career so far?
I think actually getting signed by Trax and Symphonic, that was a very big thing for us. Only because we've released before, we've self-released, and we were signed to a very small label, but there was really no traction and there was really no interest. But now, we're sitting at this point, about 4 weeks before the release. We've already secured several interviews. The songs are not even released. They're already getting put on playlists. So we're starting to get traction that I'm I'm super excited about, and on occasion people are actually coming up to me. It's like, oh, I heard of them, I heard of MindGazm, and I'm like, wow, really? It's like something's getting across. This is very exciting, for me as a musician, producer.
I love hearing that. I'm excited for you. Congratulations again. Third question. What is the most impactful thing you do to help yourself be creative?
I think traveling is one thing, but I think much more than that is really just loving your friends, loving your family, loving if you have a partner. I think it really creates and resonates certain frequencies that and gives you certain peace that you can't create otherwise, because I feel music is an intoxication, right? So you're trying to intoxicate people and make them feel better, right? So if you're not feeling good, how can you make them feel better? So if you're feeling great, you know how to create that environment, you know how to create those frequencies so others can partake. But if you're sad, and that's also a big release, right? Sadness, anger, those are the best. But if you can't get back to a good state of mind, it's hard to bring other people there with you.
Excellent. I love that. I completely agree with that. Looking back, what piece of gear would you have not purchased? Why?
Oh man.
Like the number one total waste of money.
Man, I have so much gear, so much waste of money. Oh Lordy.
First one that comes to mind.
Oh man. I'm like, honestly, okay, I know. DDJ, not 200, 100. So because the DDJ 200 and not 400, because the 400 actually is great for mobile gigs. Like if you're completely mobile, it's very easy, like super light. And it has everything. It has like the buttons for loops. It has like highs, lows, effects, like in the controller. DDJ 200 doesn't have anything Bluetooth ready. It looks really cool. You could bring it with you, but you still need your computer. I mean, you still need your computer for the other one as well. But I mean, like to actually change the effects, to set up the loop. So, I mean, it's like, it's a very small, all the other equipment I really like. Honestly.
There we go. All right. So everyone who's listening, don't buy that. What is your proudest moment as a musician so far?
You know what? Sitting here with you, I'm really enjoying this. Today was really fucking well. Edit that. Today was really, really cool. The sunset, everything, this interview and other interviews we've done recently. Also Elements was amazing. The way all those people started dancing. We were doing silent disco, completely ran out of headphones. There was a line of people and we were playing against the headliner at the same time as Bedouin. And, because of sound ordinance, they had to stop, but we kept going. So our set lasted 4 hours instead of like an hour and a half. And nobody stopped us, and everybody partook. So it was really, really nice. And at some point, and because it was really cold, and we were outside, but in the tent it was really warm, and there was like a couple of ladies that came up. They were dressed in lingerie, and they refused to, entrench themselves in this cold, and they just continued dancing and keeping themselves warm this way. And they were like, "We support you. We're here for you," and it was just so great, And actually, somebody actually came and just took video of all of it, and he was just a random gentleman. And he showed me, showing me all these people that are dancing throughout the area. Because, they weren't all in one area.
Right.
But there was like 150 headphones and they were all gone, so.
Right. And a lot of times when you're performing, I'm a musician as well. You can't always.
And a good one.
Thank you.
I've seen you play. I've even played with you, sir.
Yeah, that's true.
You're just fine, I must say.
Thank you.
High five.
High five. So to wrap it up, one big tip of advice that you would give for a budding musician, someone who's just starting or they know this is the path for them. One thing that number one takeaway.
I'd like to do two things because one is just not enough.
Go ahead.
There's 10 things, but really let's stick to two. So first thing is most important. Don't give up and believe in yourself. If you don't believe in your art, nobody will believe in your art. Even if it's terrible, have that confidence.
Yep.
Number two, use karma. Help people. They'll help you. You know what I mean? Use their art to further your art, because it's the only way to go. There's really the only way to push your art is with other people's art. So if they enjoy it, you enjoy it, and you share audience.
Gregory, thank you so much for performing for us today. This was such a cool experience.
Yeah.
And I will remember it forever.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely,
Zander,
buddy.
man, thank you.